To the session where we would be discussing the chapter Acid, Bases and Salt. In this session, I will give you an introduction to what acid, bases and salts are. We will discuss chemical properties of acid, bases and salt, particularly acids in this session, by studying reactions of acids and bases with metals, reactions of acids with carbonates and metal hydrogen carbonates. We will study about neutralization reactions. We will study about a simple reaction with acid and a metal oxide, and we will make a summary of whatever we studied in this session and then go to the next session. So let us now begin with acid, bases and salt, and introduction. Acid is a substance whose water solution tastes sour and they turn blue litmus red and they neutralize bases. A substance which is a base has in an aqueous solution, it tastes bitter, bases become blue, hence it turns red litmus blue and it neutralizes acids. Salt is that neutral substance which is now produced when acids and bases react with each other, and since it is a neutral substance, it does not affect litmus paper. To actually understand what an acid is, what a base is, what litmus paper is, let us now go further. To understand and how to classify what an acid is, what a base is, what a salt is, we use some materials which are called indicators, such as litmus or red cabbage or turmeric solutions or extracts of colored petals and some flowers. These can be used as acid-base indicators to detect what is the nature of a solution that is presented in front of you. So, normally when you add a solution or a drop of this indicator to a solution that is in front of you, it will either change its color, or it will remain colorless, or it will change its odor, the way it smells. And through those classifications, you will be able to identify whether the substance that you just used was either an acid, was either a base, or it was just a neutral substance such as salt. And once we know how these indicators react and how the reactions take place, we will be able to study further reactions and then draw conclusions and make basic properties of acids and basic properties of bases and salts. We are interested in studying the chemical properties of acid, bases and salt. We are interested in how new compounds are formed or what compounds are extracted when a certain acid reacts with a certain metal or an oxide of a metal or a certain hydrogen carbonate or a certain metal carbonate. This helps us then study how metals in different places, when kept in different environments or substances, will react. Same goes for bases. In this session, our concentration will be on acids. Let us go further. So, what an acid is? Usually, an acid has a substance or is a substance which releases an H+ ion. An H+ ion is a positively charged hydrogen ion in an aqueous solution. Aqueous solution means solution in water. So acids are substances which, when they dissociate, means which when their chemical formula, the ions which they are made of, they break into two. When they dissociate into two, then acid will release its H+ ion in that aqueous solution. We have two kinds of acids, inorganic and organic acids. Acids which are obtained from rocks, minerals, are called mineral acids or inorganic acids. Most acids that you see around you are either divided into inorganic acids or organic acids. Let us study about the examples of inorganic acids. First, HNO3. HNO3 is a nitric acid, or it's called as nitric acid. It is used to make explosives such as TNT. TNT is an explosive that is made of nitric acid. Nitric acid is a very strong acid. HCl. HCl stands for hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is usually found in stomach as gastric juice. If you recall, you would have heard somewhere in lower classes, or you would have studied that when you digest food, it goes into your stomach and it is broken down into smaller particles by the action of hydrochloric acid on that food. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, is also used as a cleaning agent. HCl can be both. HCl can be a very strong acid also if it is concentrated. It can act as a weak acid also when it is diluted with water. Next inorganic acid is sulfuric acid, which has a formula of H2SO4. Sulfuric acid actually has a lot of uses, two common ones being in fertilizers and in car batteries. The next acid that we will study is carbonic acid. Carbonic acid has a formula of H2CO3. The CO3 compound is a carbonate compound. It is made up of one carbon atom and three oxygen atoms, and together that compound is carbonate compound, CO3. H2CO3 carbonate acid is found in, or carbonic acid is found in soft drinks, and it is a very weak acid. So the effervescence or the perforance that you get when you first open a soft drink bottle, that is the essence due to carbonic acid present in that particular soft drink. These are some of the most common inorganic acids that we see around us. Nitric acid, HNO3, H2SO4, sulfuric acid, HCl, hydrochloric acid, H2CO3 is carbonic acid. Now, organic acids are compounds that are made from carboxyl groups. Now, what are carboxyl groups? You don't have to go into detail. You just have to know that structures or formulas that have a COO group in them, that is carbon, oxygen, oxygen, are carboxyl groups. And these organic compounds which have these carboxyl groups, they have acidic properties. It means they also turn blue litmus red. They also are sour to taste, and they react with metals in the same way most acids do. So they are also termed as acids. These are organic acids. They have a carbon atom that is present in their structure. Now, two that I have discussed here with you is HCOOH, which is formic acid. Formic acid is used in leather industry heavily. The second one is CH3COOH, acetic acid. Acetic acid is present in vinegar. Now, you see, the most common thing in both of these acids is the COO group that I told you about. These carboxyl acids are very weak acids, but being organic, a carbon atom must be present in their structure. What makes a compound organic is what we will study in later chapters. For now, you have to only remember this. Two types of acids, inorganic and organic. Inorganic, minerals and rocks derived. Organic have carboxyl groups in them. Now, the types that are HNO3, HCl, H2SO4, H2CO3 being the common inorganic acids, formic acid and acetic acid with oxalic and tartaric acid being organic acids, common ones. Now, bases. Bases are substances which are capable of releasing hydroxyl ions, OH- ions, in an aqueous solution. If acids release H+ ions, bases release OH- ions in aqueous solutions. Now, if we study the bases, we have the strongest base, which is called caustic soda or sodium hydroxide, has a formula of NaOH. So when this base will dissociate itself in an aqueous solution, the two ions that will be formed are Na+ and OH-, and OH- is this hydroxyl ion that we were talking about, and this is how we identify bases. The second example is caustic potash or potassium hydroxide, made of potassium and the hydroxyl group OH. It is used to make soap, soda and other materials. Potassium hydroxide is as strong of a base as sodium hydroxide. Next, milk of magnesia or magnesium hydroxide, which has a formula of MgOH twice. It is used as an antacid. Antacids are substances that help you reduce acidity in your stomach. Next base that we study is AlOH thrice, which is aluminium hydroxide. This is a base which is usually used in fire extinguishers. The next base that is most common is ammonium hydroxide. Ammonium hydroxide is not a very strong base, so it is used in removing grease marks. Most detergents that we use have base as their substance. Baking soda, drain cleaner, ammonia, soaps, detergents, they are mostly made of bases. So, an acid is a substance which is capable of releasing H plus ion, and a base is a substance which is capable of releasing one or more hydroxyl OH minus ions in an aqueous solution. Now, what are indicators? We know that an indicator indicates nature of a particular solution. An indicator is a substance that helps you classify a specific solution as either acidic or either basic or neutral. The examples of indicators are litmus, methyl orange, phenolphthalein, etc. Now, all indicators do not appear naturally. Some occur naturally and some are synthesized by chemicals. So, litmus is a natural indicator. Litmus solution is a purple dye and it is extracted from lichens. Now, we know that bases become blue. So, when red litmus paper is dipped in a solution which is a base, that red litmus paper will turn blue. And if a blue litmus paper is dipped in an acidic solution, that blue litmus paper will turn red. We have artificial indicators also, as I just told you, those that are prepared in laboratories. The most common ones are methyl orange and phenolphthalein. Methyl orange is an indicator, if dropped in an acidic solution, will turn into red or pinkish color and will turn yellowish or orangish in a basic medium. Phenolphthalein will turn colorless in an acidic medium but turns base pink or very light pink in basic mediums. This is how you can indicate whether a solution is either acid or either a base. So, when we study chemical properties of acid, bases and salt, we first know how they react with different kind of indicators, or how are they changing their color or their smell when a different indicator is brought near them. So, we know acids turn blue litmus red. Methyl orange is an indicator which turns red in acidic substances. Phenolphthalein is again an artificial indicator which turns colorless in acidic medium. Now, when we're talking about bases, bases turn red litmus blue. Methyl orange is the indicator which will turn yellow in basic substances. And phenolphthalein is an indicator which will turn pale pink in a basic medium. While litmus is a natural indicator, methyl orange and phenolphthalein are artificial indicators. They are man-made. Turmeric is another natural indicator. Now, there are other kinds of indicators also which change smell of a particular solution that can help them indicate whether it's an acidic solution or it's a basic solution. Such indicators which change smell in an acidic or a basic medium are called olfactory indicators. Now, let us study how acids will react with metals. For this particular study, we will do an activity and look at a video of how these reactions take place. So, we take acid, which is the HCl, hydrochloric acid, and for the metal, we choose zinc. Now, we let them react with each other, and we know that the chemical reaction goes as follows. Acid plus metal is metal salt plus hydrogen. So, when you take about 10 ml of dilute HCl, not strong HCl, in a test tube, and if you add a piece of zinc metal to it, then you will see the effervescence will be provided and some kind of gas will be evolved. Now, how to test what gas is evolved? We know that hydrogen gas is evolved, but to test for hydrogen gas, we pass this gas through a tube or a pipe and bring a lit matchstick near it. That matchstick will go off with a pop sound, and that will help us, that will actually confirm the presence of hydrogen or the evolution of hydrogen from this particular chemical reaction. So the basic conclusion is, when acid and a metal react together, salt is formed of that metal and hydrogen gas is evolved. The equivalent equation for this particular activity that we did, where HCl reacts with zinc metal, is 2HCl in an aqueous solution plus zinc, which is a solid, gets us ZnCl2, which is zinc chloride, plus hydrogen gas. Now, to study the video of this exact particular activity, I have provided to you through the source, that is Jeremy Krug, where he explains how zinc reacts with hydrochloric acid, and the video of the same. I have provided the source and the video link if you want to go and check for yourself. Let us see. Now, zinc reacting with hydrochloric acid. As you see the test tube that has been presented with the stand in front of you, some amount of hydrochloric acid, about 3 ml, goes inside the test tube, and then a piece of zinc or some pieces of zinc will be added to that particular hydrochloric acid. Small piece of zinc metal is being added to the hydrochloric acid. That hydrochloric acid is not concentrated. So when it is added, a certain kind of chemical reaction takes place where zinc is now reacting with hydrochloric acid to form zinc chloride. Now, the gas that is evolved, H2, is being collected in another test tube, as you see. And for some time this gas will be collected. Now, later when that gas is collected, we will try and remove the test tube. Also, this reaction is giving off heat. Since this reaction is giving off heat, this reaction is exothermic reaction. Now, if you notice, for some time we will let the hydrogen gas fill inside the test tube that has been kept upside down. Until we see zinc chloride being formed. And now we remove this particular test tube to test for hydrogen gas. So what is being done in the video is, now the hydrogen gas has been collected in this test tube that was put upside down, and a matchstick which is lit is being brought just near that test tube which now has hydrogen gas. And it will burn with a pop sound. We have seen the slow motion of it again. It burns with a pop sound and it goes off. This is how zinc actually reacts with hydrochloric acid. So, what are our conclusions? We know that when an acid reacts with a metal, salt of that acid is produced and hydrogen gas is evolved. That reaction generally is an exothermic reaction where heat is also involved. So if you have to write a general equation where a metal is reacting with an acid to give metal salt plus hydrogen, you will say metal plus acid, arrow towards products, metal salt plus hydrogen. If you take another example where the metal zinc will react with sulfuric acid, the reaction will go as follows. Zinc plus sulfuric acid gives you zinc sulfate plus hydrogen gas. Chemical equation for the same is Zn plus H2SO4 gives ZnSO4 plus H2. So our basic generic reaction is metal plus acid is giving you metal salt plus hydrogen. If you remember this, then you will be able to write any reaction of a metal with a certain acid. Let us go to the next, where how bases are reacting with metals. Normally we do not study how bases react with metals because all bases react in different manners with different metals. There is no generic equation where we can say base plus metal equal to some kind of base salt plus hydrogen. That does not happen. So one example that we took was when we take zinc metal in a test tube and we take sodium hydroxide, about 10 ml of it, and we mix them and we try and observe the reaction. Then we see that hydrogen gas is evolved in this particular reaction, and the equation will go as follows. 2NaOH, that is 2 molecules of sodium hydroxide, react with 1 molecule of zinc to form a certain substance which is called sodium zincate. Its formula is Na2ZnO2, sodium zincate, and hydrogen gas is evolved. But this is the only reaction that produces such kind of a substance, sodium zincate, and a hydrogen gas is evolved. This does not happen with every base. For example, if you take magnesium hydroxide instead of sodium hydroxide, you will not have magnesium zincate forming at the end. Some other substance will form. So there is no generic equation, or there is no generic way in which we can say how bases react with metals. Bases have specific reactions with metals, while acids have a generic reactions with metals. If an acid reacts with a certain metal, then we will have the salt of that metal plus hydrogen gas. So that is it for how bases and acids react with metals. We know that when bases react with metals, such reactions that are being shown in front of you are not always possible. Now, reaction of acids with carbonates and metal hydrogen carbonates. As I first told you, we are interested in chemical properties of acids and bases. We only study how different reactions are taking place, different chemical changes, different compounds that are being formed every time a different kind of a metal is reacting with a certain kind of an acid or a base. So carbonate, as I first told you, has the compound CO3, and it has a valency of -2. It is an anion. Now, we are going to study acids, how they react with carbonates and metal hydrogen carbonates. It means that HCO3 is the compound that will come in place. Now, there are two test tubes that we have. In the diagram, only one has been presented to you, the one where Na2CO3, that is sodium carbonate, is reacting with an acid which is HCl. Two test tubes that you take or you can take will be one which will have sodium hydrogen carbonate, one which will have sodium carbonate. Then you can add about some amount of at least 2 ml of dilute HCl to both the test tubes. The reactions will be similar, is why we only will discuss one of them. If you now mix this sodium carbonate with hydrochloric acid, sodium chloride will be formed with the evolution of carbon dioxide, and water will be formed. If sodium hydrogen carbonate, NaHCO3, that is a hydrogen carbonate, sodium is the metal, so metal hydrogen carbonate reacts with HCl, that is hydrochloric acid, NaCl is also formed, water is formed, and CO2 gas is evolved. So metal hydrogen carbonates and metal carbonates, that is metal with this carbonate compound, carbonate group CO3, when both of these hydrogen carbonates and metal carbonates react with dilute hydrochloric acid, then sodium salt or metal salt is formed, and water and carbon dioxide are evolved. Now, if you pass the gas through lime water, that is CaOH, then CaCO3, that is a white precipitate, will be formed, and water will also be formed. So quicklime has a formula of CaOH twice, right? That is calcium hydroxide. Now the Ca2 gas that is now evolved. Now, as we were discussing, sodium hydrogen carbonate and sodium carbonate both react in the same way with hydrochloric acid, and a salt of that metal is formed, that is sodium chloride in this case, and water is formed, liquid form, and CO2 gas is evolved. Now, how to test for the fact that CO2 is being evolved? You know that when quicklime reacts with CO2, a white precipitate of calcium carbonate is formed. Now, quicklime has a formula of CaOH twice. Now, if you pass this gas, evolved gas, through a test tube in a solution which contains CaOH twice, that is calcium hydroxide, then you will see a white precipitate that will be formed. If you pass excess of gas, means if you pass that CO2 gas from that solution, previous solution, for a very long period of time, then something called calcium hydrogen carbonate will be formed, which will then be soluble in water, and that white precipitate will disappear. So these are important equations one must always remember. Any kind of metal hydrogen carbonate or metal carbonate reacts with a certain kind of an acid to give you salt of that acid, water and carbon dioxide. To test for the carbon dioxide gas that is evolved, we pass the gas through lime water solution and a white precipitate of calcium carbonate is formed. Now, if you pass the gas that was being evolved for a longer period of time, this white precipitate will now form calcium hydrogen carbonate, and this particular calcium hydrogen carbonate will be soluble in water. Now, for the activity that we just discussed, we will see a video of how this reaction actually takes place. The source and the link has been mentioned. If you want to go and check it out, you can for yourself. The source is Elmosier books, and it is detection of CO2 gas by clear lime water. So the reactions will be similar to the ones that we just discussed. So as we were discussing, we take metal hydrogen carbonate, in our case sodium hydrogen carbonate, and sodium carbonate, Na2CO3 and NaHCO3. We will have dilute hydrochloric acid, and we will have quicklime, CaOH twice. All these are the materials that you need. So in some solution, let's take some quicklime as in the video. Now we have two compounds in front of us, sodium carbonate and sodium hydrogen carbonate. We will take sodium carbonate first in a test tube, and we will add a bit of hydrochloric acid, about 5 ml dilute hydrochloric acid to it, and the reaction will start taking place. The reaction will start taking place and sodium salt will be formed and water will be formed and CO2 gas will be evolved. This CO2 gas that is being evolved, as you see, it is being mixed with quicklime. As it is being mixed with quicklime, we have a white precipitate being formed, if you can see at the bottom of the test tube. This white precipitate is being formed, that is the equation that is being presented to you right in front. Now, if you keep passing gas for a longer period of time, you see that white precipitate that was formed, it will disappear. And that is all for the reaction that we just discussed. It is important to remember these equations when you pass the gas CO2 that is evolved through calcium hydroxide, then white precipitate of calcium carbonate is formed. If excess gas is formed, this precipitate will disappear as calcium hydrogen carbonate will form, which is soluble in water. So in our conclusions, we see that the reaction of a metal carbonate with a metal hydrogen carbonate with an acid, so a reaction of a metal with either reaction of an acid with a metal carbonate or a metal hydrogen carbonate gives you a corresponding salt. It will give you carbon dioxide and it will give you water. The generalized form of this reaction is metal carbonate plus acid gives you salt, carbon dioxide and water. Metal hydrogen carbonate plus acid gives you salt plus carbon dioxide plus water. If you pass this carbon dioxide that is released in quicklime, then that another white precipitate will be formed with calcium carbonate as its formula. If you pass this gas for a longer period of time, calcium hydrogen carbonate will be formed. That white precipitate will disappear since calcium hydrogen carbonate is soluble in water. Now, neutralization reactions. Neutralization reaction takes place between an acid and a base. You know, a positive charge and a negative charge go on and they mix with each other, or they neutralize each other, or they make an atom stable. Such way you can think that an acid and a base come together as they are opposites and they neutralize to form a neutral object or a compound called salt. Now, if you take about 2 ml of dilute sodium hydroxide solution in a test tube and add 1 drop of phenolphthalein indicator, you will observe a certain color, right? That will be pinkish. If you now add dilute HCl to the solution drop by drop, that pink color will keep disappearing. Why? Because that acid will react with that base to give you a salt. So, the effect of the base is nullified by the acid. Pink color of phenolphthalein will reappear on adding a drop of NaOH. But if no drop of NaOH is added, and just if you keep adding an acid, then the reaction that will occur between that acid and that base in the above activity that we just discussed is NaOH, that is a base, with HCl, that is a acid, react together to give you a salt, which is neutral sodium chloride, plus water, which is H2O. This is the most basic neutralization reaction that you will study as of right now. So let us now study the same activity, or a little same activity. I have given you the source, and Berkeley Chem Demos is the one that gives you an acid-base reaction of HCl and NaOH. Let us see the activity. Now, we have 2 solutions. One of them is HCl, the another of them is NaOH, sodium hydroxide, right? Universal indicator is an indicator which is made up of a lot of substances. It turns pink in acidic medium and purple in a basic medium, that universal indicator. Usually it has a range of colors. As of now, you can say red to pinkish and blue to purplish in basic, red to pinkish in acidic. If you mix and you see as it's being done in the video that has been presented to you, HCl pH less than 3, pink, NaOH pH less than greater than 7, which is purple. Mix them together, a neutral solution is formed with a pH of 7, which has color green. How do we see pHs through color of neutral solutions? We will study later. As of now, you just have to see that when an acid reacts with a certain base, both of them in equal quantities, then they form a neutral solution of a salt and water. Now, what is the conclusion? The reaction of an acid with a base to give salt and water is what a neutralization reaction is. In general, neutralization reactions can be written as base plus acid gives you salt plus water. Now, the example is the most common one, hydrochloric acid reacting with sodium hydroxide to give you sodium chloride and water. The chemical equation being HCl plus NaOH giving you NaCl plus H2O. Now, sulfuric acid plus sodium hydroxide, another example, will give you sodium sulfate plus water. The formula for for sulfuric acid is H2SO4. For sodium hydroxide is NaOH, which will give you Na2SO4, sodium sulfate plus water, which is H2O. This is also an acid-base reaction. And sodium sulfate is the salt that is formed. Now, acid with a metal oxide. Even when acid will react with a metal oxide, it will give you some compounds. To study this, I just have a diagram in front of you where we have copper oxide, which is black in color, reacts with a diluted hydrochloric acid, and with stirring you will see that the solution, when you mix it, it will turn bluish. And once it turns bluish, that will indicate the formation of copper chloride or CuCl2 plus some water. The change in color of the solution is what will help you decide how acid reacts with a metal oxide. So, if you take a small amount of copper oxide in beaker and add some amount of dilute hydrochloric acid to it, so while stirring, you will observe some changes in the solution, and the color of the solution is what will change into a bluish green solution. This will act as the formation of copper chloride. Now, your conclusion is copper oxide that is present in the beaker dissolves in dilute hydrochloric acid and the color becomes bluish green. This is the formation of copper chloride. Even metal oxides in water with acid have a generic reaction just as metal with acid, and it is salt and water. So, both metals when reacting with acids and metal oxides reacting with acids will have a same direction of products, that is metal salt and some water. Now, in both reactions, as we saw, salt and water are products. Both metallic oxide and metallic hydrides give salt and water when they react with an acid. So, metal oxides are also basic in nature as metal hydroxides. Why? We know that even bases react with acids to give you salt and water, and metal oxides and metal hydrides also react with acids to give you salt and water. So just comparing these two reactions of acid and bases and acids and metal hydrides or metal oxides, you see that metal oxides and metal hydrides behave exactly as bases. So you can say that they are basic in nature. Now, whatever we studied, mostly we were able to derive chemical properties regarding acids. We know that acids turn blue litmus red. They react with metals to produce metal salt and hydrogen gas. They react with metal oxide to produce salt and water. So metal oxides and metal hydrides react in the same way as bases do, so they are basic in nature. Acids react with bases to form salt and water. This reaction is termed as neutralization reaction. Acids react with hydrogen carbonates and metal carbonates to give you a corresponding salt, carbon dioxide and water. This carbon dioxide, when passed through lime water, will get you a formation of a white precipitate, which is calcium carbonate. This helps you identify that carbon dioxide was the gas that was released from this reaction of acid with a metal carbonate or a metal hydrogen carbonate. That is it for this session. So let us now recall what we studied in this session. We know acids are substances that release H+ ions in aqueous solutions. They taste sour, they turn blue litmus red, and they neutralize bases. We know substances which release an hydroxyl ion, OH- ion in aqueous solutions, are bases. They taste bitter, they turn red litmus blue, and they neutralize acids. Salt is the neutral substance whose aqueous solution does not affect litmus, and they are formed when acids and bases react with each other. We know that acids react with metals to form a metal salt, and hydrogen gas is evolved. Acids react with metal carbonates and metal hydrogen carbonates to give you a metal salt and water and carbon dioxide. Acids react with metal oxides to also give you salt and water. So we know that metal oxides and metal hydrides behave the same way as bases do. So they are basic in nature. Acid and bases react together to give you salt and water. This reaction is neutralization reaction. As I just said, acids react with metals to produce metal salt and hydrogen gas, react with metal oxide to produce salt and water, react with bases to also form salt and water. This exact reaction, third one, is called neutralization reaction. Acids react with hydrogen carbonates and metal carbonates to give you a corresponding salt, carbon dioxide and water. Bases do not react with metals the same way acids do. We studied a reaction where zinc reacts with sodium hydroxide to give you sodium zincate. But with this reaction will not be possible if you use magnesium hydroxide instead of sodium hydroxide. Hence, reaction of bases with metals are different in each case. It depends on different conditions and other characteristics. Most chemical properties of bases are that they are bitter, they react with acids, they neutralize acids as acid neutralize bases. Other chemical properties are something that we will discuss in later chapters. So that is it for this session. In the next session, we will be studying about how bases react with non-metal oxides. Right now, we studied how acids react with metal oxides. We will now see how bases will react with non-metal oxides. It will be a similar reaction. We will now come to a point where we will think about if all compounds that contain hydrogen can be considered as acids or no, because we know acids release the H plus ion, the hydrogen atom, in the form of an ion when they dissociate in their aqueous solutions. But if all compounds that are present around us which contain hydrogen, for example water, can it be considered an acid, and what is the activity that will relate to it? We will study a bit more about how these ions dissociate into different cations and anions from their respective bases or respective acids. We will see how water is either mixed with an acid or base, or whether you should add acid to water or whether you should add water to acid, and which is dangerous. We will then discuss what pH is and what is the strength of acid, bases and salt. That is it for this session, and I have already discussed what we would be discussing in the coming next sessions. Till then, I hope everybody is safe. Thank you and goodbye.